So y'all remember from the last couple of weeks, we started off with worshiping and making sure that we were giving ourselves over to God in this season instead of just over to the commercialism and everything that goes along with it. The second week was talking about spending less, that we were taking and trying to make conscious decisions about gifts and things that we were trying to buy for folks, and recognizing that the best gift that we can give is of our time. Because that's one thing we seem to have the least amount of, and the most people get more out of us giving of our time to them than just some piece of plastic or toy or whatever that doesn't really have any meaning to it. So. And this week, and I mentioned it last week, I said this is funny because we went right from spending less to this week saying giving more. And so that was the dichotomy for a lot of us as we started talking about this. And you will hear too that all Advent Conspiracy is about us looking at the commercialism that has happened around Christmas and trying to go back to what the original meaning is. We're anticipating the coming of our Lord, the incarnation of Jesus Christ here on earth with us. As we get closer to Christmas. And so we want to make sure that we are taking a view back into why we do this and what Advent is all about. For us, this is the beginning of our church year. Advent is when we start our calendar, and everything else we do throughout the rest of the year is following along from the incarnation and then Jesus' ministry throughout the world, throughout the old country, and how that then has spread throughout the world. And then that follows right into, of course, Easter. And then we just have we are coming out of now our ordinary time, which is Pentecost for us. So there's Pentecost Day, and then this time that happens after Pentecost until we reach Advent again is called ordinary time, and that's this time frame that we're in right now. In fact, this is the last Sunday. I'm sorry, 2 more Sundays. Next Sunday will be the last Sunday of ordinary time as we get ready to start into Advent. So, one of the questions that they asked was, what was the most meaningful gift that you've ever received, and did it have a lasting impression? And I think I talked about it a couple weeks ago, how I had made a scrapbook, basically, for my uncle that was of the lighthouse, the White Shoal Lighthouse. That was the White House that his father was attending for. And he, as a kid, got to go out to the lighthouse. And this is not one that's on the shoreline. It's actually out in the middle of the lake, one of the Great Lakes. And you had to ride a boat to get out to it, and then you were there for the time that you were serving on the shore. And so I was even able to find a picture of the logbook that his father had signed into, the logbook for the lighthouse. And was able to find his father's signature in that book, and was able to give that to him as a gift from the year. It was very meaningful for him and for me, because I was finally able to connect with my uncle on something that I really didn't know that well at the time, but it really was a good connection between the two of us. So, does anyone else have a gift that they received that really had some more meaning for them?
I have a gift I made. That I have 3 brothers, and I'm the oldest, and therefore the only child with a baby book.
Oh, yeah.
You know how that goes,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so I decided they needed baby books. So I went back through all the old pictures, and I made them each, there's 3 of them, I made them each a baby book. Just, you know, it was, and it was one of those presents. It just struck me I needed to do it, and they, I don't have any idea if they ever look at them now or not, but, you know, it's just one of those things I felt like, this is, you know, this is something I'm supposed to do. So, yeah, because my 3 brothers, we have 2 moms, and it's a longer story, but neither mom is alive, and so, you know, it was my job.
Yeah.
I thought.
So,
I'll say that's wonderful, and you put time and love and effort into that. So much more than just buying something.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I didn't give them anything else
Yeah,
at
no, that's
Christmas. It was like,
No,
okay, this is it, guys.
Yeah, that's the one thing, since I lost my mother, I don't know what happened to all the stuff that we had. And they did have baby books for me and my brother, and I've lost my brother as well, and I don't have any of that material. And even things like baptismal certificates and things like that were in it, I don't have any of that. I've even gone back to the church where I was baptized and asked them if they had any records of it, and they had lost all the records as well. So it was just like, okay. What are some of your favorite Christmas traditions?
music,
Music.
Christmas music. And I'm thinking, especially at the San Lucia festivals, that my girls were always in church. It was just so beautiful. It's just girls singing up all the campus. Just so beautiful, the music. Every year well, it started before they were old enough, because usually it was maybe 8th graders through seniors in high school. And it was just something, and I remember when my girls were little, they would see the San Lucia singers, they'd go home, and they'd walk up and down the hallway with their candles singing San Lucia. It was so sweet.
Okay, so like we've done others, I'm going to show you one of their short video, and then we'll continue on after that. So.
What was the most meaningful gift you've ever received? Chances are most of us have a specific memory that comes to mind. There is something deeply moving and beautiful about certain gifts. Now, why is that? Probably because that gift is more than a gift. It's wrapped in meaning, and there's something about it that celebrates a relationship. The person who gave you this gift took time to think about you, to prepare this special present for you. The act of giving relationally can actually reflect, in some small way, the power and beauty of God coming into our world as one of us. Emmanuel, God with us, God beside us, God becoming one of us. Relational giving is beautiful, but one of the big pressures each Christmas season is coming up with gift ideas. If we're not careful, this meaningful act can turn into a source of stress and an unnecessary burden. Maybe you have felt this before. For some people, this tenet comes easy. Your love language is gift giving, and you've got ideas planned months in advance. Others like to create and make things with their own hands. But what about the rest of us? The people that this doesn't always come easily to. For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son. These familiar words of John 3:16 hold a truth that we cannot miss. What was the motivation of this priceless gift? Love. That means that there's no right or wrong way to participate or to give a relational gift as long as the heart behind it is love. Some people struggle with the idea that their relational gift won't stack up in a comparison to a gift somebody else has put together. Have you ever thought to yourself, I'm just not good at giving gifts? When we believe that lie, it turns our relational gift giving into a competition instead of an act of love. So how do we avoid that trap? Begin with the end in mind. Think about the person that you're wanting to give this gift to. Think about the memories that you share together. Think about their favorite hobbies, your favorite things about them. Relational giving means that we are thinking about the other person, who they are, what they care about. These gifts don't always have to be elaborate, handcrafted items. Now, sometimes they are, but other times they are small, intimate gifts. A recipe book, a photo tied to a memory, an experience that the two of you can do together, like cooking a meal or going on a hike together. It's about the giving of your time and your memories and your presence, your gifts and your talents. The giving of our time and presence to one another is not a new concept, but I do think it's a neglected one. This may sound obvious, but relational gifts should celebrate, well, the relationship. Whether they are a family member, a friend, a coworker, a teammate, God has blessed you by putting this person in your life. When we take the time to stop and remember this, I think it changes our gift giving. It's no longer about finding the biggest, nicest, most expensive thing we can surprise someone with. It's not about trying to impress or trying to outdo someone else's gift. Giving more is truly about celebrating the other person, who they are, and what they mean to you. When we choose to participate in this kind of countercultural giving, it not only pleases God, but it demonstrates to a watching world what it looks like to follow Jesus. Whether this idea of giving more of yourself sounds easy or you're a little nervous about it, I'm praying that you lean in and notice how God will meet you in this moment. Our gifts won't be perfect, they never are. But we have the chance this Christmas to do something different, to practically demonstrate the incarnational love of Jesus to those around us through giving. So ask Jesus to spark a creative idea in your head or to give you the courage to give that vulnerable gift to someone else. We can do this. As a group, take some time to share ideas and encourage one another. We can help each other get better at these different ways of giving. All it takes is that first step.
That is one of the Advent calendars that's on that outline is one of the Advent calendars that's on the diocesan website. I made a copy of it.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So, we talked about the Word became flesh. And so John 1, of course, this many of you have heard and know this one as the other beginning of the world story, right? The beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through Him, and without Him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in Him was the life, and the life was the light of all peoples. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as the witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, or of the will of the flesh, or the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, and the glory of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. So how does this passage remind you of the miracle of Christmas?
That's what Christmas is all about.
You know, I grew up, and while my parents occasionally went to church, it wasn't the main thing. And so Christmas for me, really early on, was about Christmas trees and presents and things like that. I did not get the tie-in to understanding the birth of Christ until much later in my life. And really more or less on my own, because my family wasn't really into church. So, but this one has always been interesting because it does tell the story of God and of God's Son, not understanding for the longest time what his meaning was of the word. But I can still remember even in seminary where I finally kind of grasped this this first part of the scripture saying that Jesus was the Word, and he was in since the very beginning of all time. So when we go back and we really look at the Old Testament in Genesis and we read about that and we reread it under this understanding of John 1, we pick up that Jesus was there all along and everything came through him. God said it, Jesus made it happen, the Holy Spirit carried it out. And so this gives so much more context to who Jesus is in the Trinity than just what we've learned from the Old Testament about the Messiah and why the Messiah was coming. And all of this was all told to us in the Old Testament through the prophets. The prophets are the ones that told us that there was going to be someone coming before the light of the world to pronounce and to make straight the way of the road for him. Sorry, I just got off on a sermon. But it's so much it's so amazing to me how this piece of scripture, while we hold on to it so tightly, it is indeed Christmas, but it's this overall story of us all. It's the overall story of all Christianity, because Jesus was there in the beginning and throughout all time. And then again brings back to the idea that Jesus became incarnate, emptied himself, remember kenosis from last week, emptied himself of all of his power so that he could truly be human here on earth with us and experience the same things that we experience living on earth. And I take a lot of comfort from that, knowing that our God was willing to become like us so that he knew our pain, our troubles, our difficulties with sin. He saw it, he heard it, he knew it all was there, and he experienced it all. And that's the God that saves us. That's the God that forgives us, that gives us his grace so that we can be with him again in heaven. Sorry, I started preaching. So what do y'all think with this idea of giving more of ourselves this Christmas? And is there something that you have thought about or has come up in your mind that you want to do this year differently than maybe you've done in the past?
You know, I have to say, this group here, I think this is how we live. I don't think it's a new idea for us. I think that's what really we pattern our life after all year. It's not something that we do differently with Christmas. I think that's just the way we live. That's true. So I don't have to come up with something new. None of these people do. It's just the way we are.
I do appreciate the season of Advent, because it is for me a reminder that, you know, that this is an opportunity for us to prepare, to celebrate, to have those, to think about those relationships and how we can strengthen them and how we can more embody that idea. Because I think so often it's all about Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and that's over so fast.
Yeah.
So if you have more time to sort of, you know, prepare is the best word that occurs to me. And you're not preparing for Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. You're preparing for a continuing relationship.
And then are we not just preparing ourselves?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
And that's kind of what I like about Advent. I mean, sadly, out there in the world is busy. But to me, Advent is a very quiet time. I do think when I think of Advent, I think of one candle lit in the darkness. It's just Advent to me. It's very peaceful time.
Well, and I think, you know, as April was saying, the music is, if I don't get to attend, a lessons and carols service during Advent, I feel like I've missed out because, and I'll just go find one on the internet and just watch it. If an opportunity doesn't present itself, because I think for me, the music is also a piece of it. And some of it's, the traditional carols and that kind of stuff. I love that. But there's more sacred music that I, really, enjoy. And it reminds me that, this is at the core of who I am, what I do.
That's a personal, meaningful tradition.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a person.
Yeah.
It helps you prepare yourself.
Yeah.
We did lessons and carols a few years back. The organist that we had was a young man. He was 24. And he was involved in plays and theater and had an incredible voice. Well, we did lessons and carols, and he got all of his buddies to come in to sing for us, because we only had like 4 of us in our choir at the church we were at. So all of a sudden we had a 12-person choir with all these very talented musicians. And I didn't even think, while we were trying to plan everything, it was like, well, who would be the right person to do the lesson? And then, and obviously we had the musicians do the carol, and they all went, well, we'll do it. And these were folks that had never been in our church. They'd been involved with different churches along the way, but they were young and they were very talented. And so it was really cool, because I got one of them would come up and read the lesson, and then we'd come back into the choir loft, and then we'd sing the carols and stuff. And it was a wonderful, incredible music and everything. So
Yeah.
that can be very,
And
very
that's
helpful.
one thing here that I really miss, is doing the lessons and carols. We stopped doing it with Lucas. He didn't want to do it. And the town, I think, looked forward to coming to St. John's on Christmas Eve for the lessons and carol service.
So would that be something that would interest us this year? Because Christmas Eve is on a Sunday.
Yeah.
This year's going to be very interesting, because we're going to have Christmas Sunday morning service. That would be on Christmas Eve, morning service on that Sunday, Christmas Eve service that evening, and then we'll have Christmas Day as well, which we still have to discuss.
Yeah.
So, but that might be, because we'll do like a typical Advent service on the morning of that Sunday morning, and maybe a Christmas Eve lessons and carols. That could be.
Yeah, people really came for it. The sanctuary was full,
Wow. Okay.
and usually we had extra chairs
Yeah.
set up.
We'll talk to us.
Because it was so meaningful to
Yeah.
so many people.
We'll see
I
what
am
we can
never
do.
here for Christmas
Never
Eve or Christmas Day or
Yeah.
ever.
It's a tradition.
It is a tradition. Yes, Cynthia. Actually, one of my very favorite Christmases was we came over, we're staying with our friends who don't live here anymore. And they were members of St. John's. And we came to Christmas Eve service with them. And because I hadn't been feeling well, and we had already traveled over from the Front Range, and we couldn't travel back in time for the family stuff, because Doug's family always did a big, huge thing, because it's a huge family. And so we didn't have time to go back over there and then come back here. So we got to spend Christmas Eve here. We had Christmas dinner at the Tundra. It was the best Christmas I've ever had. Compatriot.
I just have a bag of stuff. Oh, is it over? Yeah, but I can get it.
If you consider what it means to give relationally, what most excites you? What will be the biggest challenge for you as well? So maybe we talked about relational giving, which we do anyway, but trying to be more personable with the people that we're giving gifts for, having more meaningful gifts to give. Is there anything that has struck you guys from just what we've talked about so far about having more meaningful gifts to be able to give folks this year?
I'm not talking today.
Well, that's okay.
Is that okay?
Sure, you just haven't.
We're looking forward to not really as much as giving, but just being able to spend time with family. Of course, we haven't been able to be with them, obviously, as things. And we've only had Ella's brother and sister who came and visited us this summer. So we're looking forward to just having, I told us about our white elephant Christmas that we do as a family, but it's really more about the time that we're spending together and getting to catch up. That's what we're really looking forward to most. And well, we get to actually be introduced to our granddaughter now, so.
Yeah.
So, we've seen pictures and heard her and even done FaceTime and stuff like that. She'll be 6 months old when I get home for Christmas time. So
Wonderful.
looking forward to seeing her.
Yeah, yeah, it's really strange when you talk about relations at Christmas, because my growing up in Grand Junction, my grandparents were all back in Maine. And so it was just my brother and sister, mom and dad and I. That was Christmas every year. Then after I was married and had the girls, then it was nuts, because we got to go to both grandparents, and we had great grandparents who always, she insisted on doing Christmas dinner. You know, we would Christmas Eve to my family, my parents, because that was the big time for us, was Christmas Eve. So it was like, finally at one, because then Christmas morning, okay, open the presents. Then we'd have to go to their dad's parents' house. And then we'd have to go to the great-grandparents. And finally one year I said, no, the girls are going to open their presents and they're going to stay home. If you want to see them, you come to us. And then they grew up and moved away, and then there was like, oh, back to just me and my parents. Strange.
And how did they react to you just staying home by
It
yourself?
was not that well received.
Yeah.
What do you mean? You've always come here.
That's a great thing.
Yeah. So, and actually because of that, I told both of my girls, at Christmas, you stay home. They both lived away. I mean, Ring would come home until they had kids, and I said, no, you stay home at Christmas. The kids don't need that craziness.
Create new traditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did the same thing, bouncing, trying to run from my family to Ella's family with all the kids and everything else, and it was really bad when, especially when Christmas was going to be held up in Dallas, where one of my uncles lived. We were down in Houston, and that's a 5-hour trip. So, you know, if we tried to get to both, it was just this, you know, we were driving all day long, and all the fun of Christmas time, you know, and travel is just, it was amazing.
Yeah, luckily this was all in the city. Well, my parents lived out in Redlands, but everybody else was in town. It wasn't really to travel. It was just
Sure.
here, there, here, there. Oh,
Yeah. Well, and it was weird because I only had one aunt and uncle that actually did church too, and so if we ended up over at their house, we were going Christmas Eve with them to their church, and so yeah, we do all kinds of things to family, and but I think the whole idea and the thought of just trying to be more intentional, more relational. And you know, being giving, obviously people are being giving, but being more meaningful in the gifts that we give, and knowing that time is almost
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the massive gifting. And there are certain people in my life that it's just obscene how many presents they ship in. Just like, I tell my girls, we don't have room for anything. You know, there's a few things, you know. I love to get gift cards to Starbucks
Yeah.
or the bookshop or the craft
That was the
store.
interesting thing through the years, as the kids were growing up, when they got to that age where they just no longer wanted gifts. It was just give me money. Gift cards were sometimes, kind of became the common thing. And so it's like, okay, well, they seem to grow up from being kids and getting toys to teenagers and getting money and then
Yeah.
adults, and it's like,
Yeah,
We're done, yes.
yeah, that's the least worry about.
My daughter buys her children, and I'm not sure if it's because she didn't have everything she wanted. I don't know. Everything, I mean, everything, all the time. Her son is good at Target, he gets a toy, you know, that kind of. So I don't give him anything. I really don't, and I feel bad, kind of, but,
That's the best gift. Yeah, it's
you
true.
know, I make pillowcases one year.
Yes.
In place bag, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that can be
Like the thought of one more thing in their house
Yes,
to try to pick up off the floor
exactly.
just makes me
Yes, I totally agree.
Well, as we've talked about each week, one of the things that we are trying to do in giving more is to also support the UTO and the Shima Indian Reservation. And so I've seen them around now. I'm starting to see some of the boxes show up there elsewhere. And I think I mentioned it last week, our crew, neighbor to neighbor, even started putting money in the box over there.
Yes,
So it's just like, okay.
yes.
So,
Should I put some more on the tables for this morning? Just in case?
Sure, we can do
Yeah, as well.
That's it. Next week we'll be meeting before services. We'll be meeting after services. Anyone that wants to make Advent wreaths, we have the supplies and everything to do that. Carrie's going to come in and help us with that. And so, good morning.